Welcome to the UnStruktured podcast. In this episode, my co-host Bob Smith and I talk with legendary artist and creative director Scott Clum. First design director for Sims Snowboards in the 80s, co-founder of Morrow Snowboards in the 90s, and early design director at Raygun Publishing. A pioneer in the early days of snowboarding, Scott went from team writer to graphic designer to building brands and products and periodicals that defined a culture. Scott's human-crafted style, mixing photography and typography with hand-torn edges and rough details, merges old-school zine design with high art. We talk with Scott about his early days in the world of skate and snow and how that shaped him as an artist. We dig into the lessons of his past, his visions for the future, and his advice for young creatives in this new age of technology and AI. I'm Michelle Rose, and this is UnStruktured.
A little less window. There we go.
Love the sweatshirt, man. The sweatshirt's badass.
Oh, I love, right?
Come on.
I picked it up. I literally, it's my grail. I picked it up this weekend at the Long Beach flea market.
That's really killer.
I do it. I couldn't believe it.
That's awesome. Michelle, I mean, you listen, talk about cool and style. Like Bob's got me crushed. Like I'm not cool.
Well, I just set this up for you two to connect and talk, right? Because this is going to be a big showdown between you two.
Oh, fuck that.
Okay.
I'm just here to have a good time.
Well, I'm just a facilitator.
That's it.
We can burn the city down, he and I.
Yeah,
absolutely. Right? Oh my God, that's scary.
You might want to be careful of your metaphors these days, my friend.
I know. That's right. You're right.
That's already
said
happened.
That right.
Without even thinking. That's right.
But normally I'm with you on that. But
so with that metaphor, I have to say I created this screen with AI. There's an AI feature on this thing, and I asked for it for a single floating fire. And one of these images not only had that fire there, it also had one of the pillows on fire.
Oh, nice!
No way.
It did.
Well, that's the A in AI.
Yeah. I was like, I think I won't choose that one. That's a little too out there. So
yeah, that's right.
Well, I hope you guys are doing good.
Yeah,
doing good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome. Do you have a design dungeon like I used to have? Are you in the basement of your house?
So I don't. That's a good question. I don't have a basement.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, no. But I'm on the first floor, and so this is my studio. Is basically the first floor.
I'm getting basement vibes, is why I asked. In my old life, like I like to say, my old wife. We had a house, and my studio was in the basement, and I was like, I'd go down there and like, keep out of here while I'm working.
I know, no.
My kids are terrified to come in.
Portland always has basements. Wet basements. So, and you're not in Portland, but you're close.
No,
so
right. Yeah.
We're all in California, so we don't have basements in California.
I do live in the middle of the woods, so
nice. Very nice.
I have 4 acres around me, so I don't. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Okay, I'm a little jealous, a little bit.
Well, no, don't be, because part of the thing that answer that when we're talking is that I'm always doing like manual labor. Like so I walk out and like the deer walk by our living room window all the time. For me, part of my vision always is tactile and hands-on. I'm looking at.
Yeah,
that makes sense. That tracks. Yeah.
Well, I lived in Grass Valley in Nevada City with my parents. We built 2 houses, one on 4 acres and one on 20 acres. Okay. So I know the amount of work that takes to clear brush and all the stuff you have to do to keep everything away, the bears, the fires, the wolves, all this stuff.
Very true.
That's
very true.
Well, I've already started recording because I like to catch everything, but I don't. I like to let people know, like, now we're on.
Now we're on, right? Like that.
Now
matters.
we're on. Yeah, and I keep things really relaxed. I don't like to.
No. Okay.
So
try to.
I'm in good company. I mean, come on. Like it's all good. But I appreciate it, Michelle.
Yes, absolutely. You can always trust to edit where we need to edit.
Yeah, right.
So I wanted to say, Bob, how do you feel being here for your first podcast recording?
The first time being on this side of the mic, it's kind of, I don't know, it's fun. I love you. Obviously, I love Scott.
Yep.
There's mutual respect all around the room. It's good.
Yep.
I'm finally not about to die from like whatever it was I had. I was really sick over the holidays.
Oh, man.
So, so.
A lot of people were.
Yeah. So.
Well, hats off. I'm glad to hear that, Bob. That's good.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Hats off from the 2 guys wearing hats.
Yeah.
All right. There you go.
Well, I seriously, I got to tell you, I was telling Michelle, I mean, I love her history and all her pedigree, and Bob, the same for you. Honestly,
thank you, man.
No, I really mean that, because I know that you come from the beginning of a lot of things, and especially like Portland. I mean, what it was 25 years ago. I know you know that really well, and it's really cool to be around you knowing what you know, so to speak.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and exactly. Yeah. It's funny you say that, because I would say the same to you, and you probably feel the same way I do. It's like, it was just, you were just there. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, there's a lot of people, and I watch people, and you always say this to yourself, like, oh, one of the people, well, look at these other people did. And then people not below me, but next to me go, oh, look what you did. And I go, oh, okay, I get it. But being around, like, during, like, when Plasm was coming up and Johnson Wolverton was around, and big, like, right? And and remember, this just popped up recently. Remember the OK Soda campaign? That and all that shit. It was just like so seminal. And obviously Satiricon and all that shit. But it was just like this, it was just such a, and you just like this. I don't know. I was telling Michelle, I used to go down to Art Media and pick up like I'd pick up iMagazine and Emigre. And then, like, I was just like sitting on the bus and just like, oh wow, all they're doing is talking about design. And it was just like, you know what I mean? It was so cool. Such a,
man, Art Media. I love the location right there in the corner. Same. I love going in.
Oh my God.
That was so Michelle, I tell you, we all know certain locations in any city that are just prestigious in your mind, aesthetically prestigious, right?
Yeah.
So what Bob's saying is like, so Art Media was one of those places you'd walk in and there was all your favorite stuff. Like, you couldn't ever leave the store without a shitload. I mean, like
chart pack, right?
Yeah. So you guys, you may not know, because Scott, we didn't talk about this, but I lived in Portland from 1990 until 2017.
Okay.
No, but when Art Media, when I would go to Art Media, I was a broke 20-year-old something or other. And Bob and I were talking about, this is what I want to get into too, is I studied graphic design in the 80s. But then when I came up to Portland on my own, I didn't have a lot of resources. And I was taking some classes, but I was living by myself as a 19, 20-year-old. Wow. And I got into martial arts. And so I put aside the art for a little while I kind of got my act together. But I would go to Art Media, and I had studied design early on, but in the 90s, I wasn't so privy to this kind of world of design for a few years. And that's when you guys came in, and I started picking it up in the mid 90s, in the later 90s, as I started going back to school. And my ex-husband worked at Nike as well and was a designer. So, but we all have this experience of doing graphic design in the 80s when it was really
it kind of feels, I mean, not too, it kind of feels very like being in the March, like at the turn of the 20th century, right?
Exactly. Right.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was, because it was like, it felt like it was like that endemic. It was, everything was just like, you were just like, everywhere you looked, there was something you looked at, like, oh, that person's here now, that person's here now, like and they all came from that same scene.
That's very true.
Yeah. So Scott, what was your relationship to Portland and your childhood before the snowboarding, because you started out as a skateboarder? Well, you started out as you came out of the womb as a skateboarder, right?
right. That's what we all do.
That's right.
Where did that start for you?
Okay. So that's a great question. So I'm a New Yorker. And so I went and got my degree in advertising, was bored stiff. Then I went back and got my degree in fine art at Pratt. And
so you have a degree in advertising and then fine art. Okay. Wow.
Which doesn't mean anything, but the story short, I think like all three of us were daydreaming about all these things, whether it's magazines, advertising, culture, punk rock, whatever. Right. So we're all similar that way. Like I love the whole, I think to put all this together, like Bob, you said, we were just there. Yeah. And that's really how we felt, because you could run into 20 people that day. And you thought one thing or the other. You're just like, oh, I saw my friends. Yeah. And it was just nonchalant.
I used to see Andrew Loomis at like Virginia Cafe every Thursday, getting wasted just like me. You know what I mean? Like, it was Buck Night. So
I love that. And there was no social media prominence or anything, so you didn't care. You cared about your friends, but. Anyway, to get back on the thing, So it was way back in '81 when I met Tom Sims, and I was a skateboarder from 5th grade on. So it went from there, and I'll attribute skateboarding to really my interest in aesthetics because of the colors, because of the athleticism of what people were doing, the culture. I was just like, wow, it's so unique and single partition, so to speak. But anyway,
Yeah.
So while I was in art school, Tom Sims and I got to be really good friends, and he put me on the team in '82 as one of the original professional.
Oh, wow.
team. Yeah.
Well, how did you guys meet? Like you said,
well, we met in '81 on a phone call about snowboarding and skateboarding.
That's not a phone call.
Yeah. He was in Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
how'd you end up on a phone call about skateboarding and snowboarding?
I called him to get this surf leash that he had that I wanted for a snowboard I had already had. And so that he was very curious about, like, oh, what are you putting this on? And I told him I was putting it on a winter stick, and he was like, oh, anyway. So one thing led to another. And then like a month later, he said, hey, I'm coming to Albany, capital of New York. He goes, why don't you pick me up and we'll go to the Burton contest together? And then it all went from there. So in those early days, I knew like Jake Burton really well. We were close, we were friends. And then when I was done with art school, so in between there, I would travel around to contests. I was young. And then when I was done with art school, Tom was like, you got to come to Santa Barbara. So that's how I was the first design director for Sims Snowboards.
Oh, interesting that you wouldn't have gone to like JDK or someplace like that.
Yeah, right. That's what, Bob, that's a great point. Didn't meet, I know all of those fellas, and I didn't meet them until like 92 or whatever.
Interesting,
It's all about who you come into contact with. And I think in so many of the conversations we've had about early snowboard years with Trent Bush and JJ Collier and some of those guys a little later too, that similar stories. It's just about being at a certain place at a certain time when something's rising to the top rising not even to the top, just coming up. Snowboard is a new sport being created.
Pretty much. And I, as a skateboarder, I rode a lot of Tom's products and things like that. So to your question, like I liked Jake, but I was not into that style of snowboarding.
Oh, right. Okay, that makes sense.
I mean, with all due respect. And so that's why, so Tom in his early days would handpick skateboarders to ride his equipment. So it was a little bit of a, again, like Bob's saying, we were just there. We didn't think twice about it.
But curious though, Scott, was there a certain style that like Tom gravitated towards as far as like skate style or aesthetic or?
There was, the fact that I was a vert skater and did ramps and pools automatically qualified me in his mind that I was going to ride his gear that way, because the Burton riders were all Alpine guys. Right. And Sims riders were more fluid in California and empty pools and
so this is already like style. When something is new like this and everyone's starting to create their own wave, I mean, this is the idea of music, punk rock, and what we were listening to, zines, everything where like there were certain ones that you started to gravitate to, and that's how it starts to build. And I can see that as the early Bob we were talking about, like his style, how you're developing your graphic style when you already have a style of snowboarding that is being picked up upon and encouraged and developed.
Yeah, that's really true. Again, not to make too much of an issue out of it, but I was lucky to really have that path. And again, I think I was just forthcoming about what I really wanted to do.
100%. Oh my God! Right, and let me throw this in here because this is like this dovetails into, and I'll try to. I have the ADD turned down to like about 3 right now. I'll try to keep it there. But like, do you remember when we were talking about art media? And I was playing in bands back at the time. I wasn't a skater, but I did play in a lot of bands, and so I had gotten let go from I had a job doing displays for like window displays for like.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome.
Right, so that was my big job that was the job I was doing while I was trying to make it as a whatever it was. So got left anyway. So long story short, I got let go from that job because I was whatever, but who knows, right? And I thought I could either get a job at Art Media or Kinko's because they both had access to the shit I wanted, right? So I applied for a job at Art Media, and I used to play actually in a band for a little bit with a couple guys at Art Media. And we played in the basement of that building. That was kind of fun.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
but I got a job at Kinko's because I got, guess what, free Macintosh access, and like that's where I learned Illustrator, and then we printed our band cassette there, and like it was like so that's so when you talk about going out there and like trying like that's your hustle is what I think you were describing. That's what that was for me, right? You just got like shit. How am I going to get? I have this thing I want to do. How am I going to get it done?
Yeah, that speaks to also the style at the time as we talk about graphics is cut and paste. how do you replicate? And this is what you do, Scott, like that. How do you replicate
100%.
something and cut and paste? And that's what, like with Maximum Rock and Roll, any of the zines early on that we're looking at, everything is typewriter, cut this, paste this, draw this on really quick, right?
Yeah, I just read the Darby Crash biography a few months ago. Look at from the germs, like Pasteur, that whole crap. It's the same thing over and over. It's the same energy. Like I got to do this thing. I'm going to do it by any means possible. I'm going to find friends. We're all going to figure this out. And you wake up the morning not.
I used to make punk rock show posters in the 80s. I still have some of them. And speaking, like what I wanted to kind of lay that into then is when you got hired, because first you got hired from Tom to ride, but then you got hired as a design director. Like, how did that jump over? Because you're obviously art major. So
I want to go back to what Bob was saying though. Like in all of our lives, which is significantly contrasted today. Like Bob's saying, like I hung out at Kinko's, which is folks out there is now FedEx, but because we could have access to the copy machine, like who didn't want to do that? You know what I mean? And you'd have a friend there or whatever. And also, I'll throw in Rich's Cigar.
Totally. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Right?
The best
Michelle?
magazines.
Yes,
my God. Yes.
So, what Bob's saying, he's bringing some power to this show, by the way. So what Bob's saying is like, again, like I don't think if Bob didn't have the passion, he wouldn't have taken the 15 extra steps in his life to belong to where he was belonging. So for myself, I was the same way.
Yeah, right.
We chose similar paths, of course, and that's what leads us to where we are today.
I almost feel like, and I've always kind of felt this about like, because I always feel like, believe it or not, like I always feel like I'm kind of like motivational, believe it or not. I kind of wake up like I feel like I'm basically pretty lazy. So what I try to do is create an environment where I can get dragged along. Does that make sense?
But you're totally the artist. Like we are the artists who are like feel lazy until you're really motivated by something, and then you
then get the fuck out of my way.
Exactly. Right.
That's exactly right.
But sometimes I just like I don't feel like it today, right? And so I had to like create an environment where like I commit to deadlines and shit like that. So I go, I promised I would. So I'm gonna do so. Right. And that's how after decades of this bullshit, that's how I motivate myself.
Yep.
So how did how did this style kind of, or what did you do as a design director? Like
so that's a great question. When I got to I'm already living a traveling life, being a pro snowboarder and then a skateboarder. So you're always moving on. It's like punk rock or whatever else, right? Yep. We're always moving on to one thing to another, and you're someplace and someone says, oh, hey, come to Colorado. We're going to do this, blah, blah, blah. So my life was chaptered all the time in doing different things. But when I was at Sims, I had a deep respect for Tom and the branding that was already there, because that's when I was a kid, that's what really brought me into skateboarding as well. Like I was also attracted to the aesthetics, like we all are. We're whatever, right?
Yep.
So to answer your question, Michelle, I helped Tom initially carry on the legacy of the brand that made it so popular, like Sims Pure Juice and the snake wheels and all these things. What I did was, so when I was first there, Sims developed a vertical laminate snowboard, not a horizontal laminate, but it was kind of like all these sections stacked up vertically, more like ski constructions. David Weaver, Tom Sims, and myself came up with this new board called the Blade. And it's a legendary board in snowboarding. And so one of my first in that section was to come up with the graphics for it and blah, blah, blah. So to jump forward in that, and I think this is a significant part in my life, all of the graphics I did at that point were all hand cut Rubylith.
Oh my God. When was that? Go ahead.
So I did that from early 85.
There we go. Okay.
Yep. And you're talking about 6 foot long pieces of ruby. So you're really dealing with a lot of different, like it's hard to find 6 foot.
The on-board graphics were cut with, Jesus Christ.
Can you explain that a little bit for the audience too? Like
so basically, if anybody knows about silk screening, if you put a graphic onto a silk screen and you screen it one color, you're going to get the outline of the sun and its rays and it's blue or whatever, and then you could put another yellow in it and you could print over the top and you'd have 2 colors or whatever. So snowboarding graphics were anywhere from 3 to 4 or 5 colors. So for every color, I had to cut ruby lift, which was, so for the audience, was a giant piece of red film. You take an X-Acto blade and you cut out the entire graphic, and whatever you didn't want to print, you peeled off.
Yeah.
So hand separate all that stuff. So I'd get, say I put the stripes down, and I'm just making this up. And then I put another layer down and I put registration marks all the way down it. And I line it up, I tape it, and then I cut out the stars, whatever it may be. And when you're done, you would have graphics. And I did that my entire career.
Doesn't it just kind of make your mouth water, Bob? It's just like, because I've got ruby lift artwork.
He's getting a headache first.
But then, well, here's the thing, is like, because when you first started talking about this, and I forgot, we had talked about it before, so now I remember, but when you first started talking about this time, I was like, oh, you're talking about the layouts for like the print ads. And then I realized, oh, fuck, this is the sticks.
Yeah.
These are for the board.
That's right.
Like, so you're literally like, and then I started thinking about the mechanics. Like, well, how many impressions did you get for a screen? Did you have to redo it again? Did the screen start to break down?
So,
this is all hand built, right?
That's correct. It's all, absolutely. So for the folks in the audience, I was so my graphic design also led into silkscreen printing, like a lot of us did, because you're naturally want to lay color down and misread whatever, right? But to answer that question, that was a much more of a production-oriented thing. So I had to build a screening area so that we could produce, so we could screen 200 boards a day or 400 boards a day or whatever it was.
Man.
And you did that all on site? You did that all there?
Yes.
Oh my God.
So not only did I do all of the advertising, I set up the silk screening, and then I had my staff to help me do that, but I would oversee that, and I would do prototypes, and then they would mimic them.
Man, I'm picturing I did ruby lift stuff for printing press. So it's always going on the printing press, and I'm picturing that on a snowboard in the early days.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Because you can't run it through the paper. It doesn't.
Nope. You would burn the screens with the red ruby. And so for folks out there, like, oh, how do you get your designs? I would have enlarged Xerox graphics, and then they would be underneath the ruby because you can see through it. And I would cut out whatever I wanted to be. It would take like a week.
Yeah,
exactly. Bob and I were talking about this in these past experiences that we had about a lot of X-Acto blades, blue pens that wouldn't register through it, your wax machine to wax everything down, and all of our half-tone cameras that were huge.
I think our Chantry still works that way.
Yeah,
I think he does. I think he does. Our Chantry
does.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's, to answer your question, Michelle,
we lost your light.
Yep, I lost my light. That's how I started with everything, was doing everything that way. And so I think that really contributed to my graphic design.
Yeah, absolutely. In that style. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the podcast, but I want to talk about also, then you start at Sims and then you go on to start Morrow Snowboards.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that piece.
Okay, great. So again, moving along and still being active in skateboarding and snowboarding, like critically active in the core scenario. So I want people to know that, like, right out of art school, like, it wasn't like all of us, like, I think I can probably speak for everyone here. I mean, I got a job at a newspaper doing paste up. I had to be there at 6 a.m. And honestly, so everybody knows, and I'm sure Michelle and Bob can echo this, I had no expectations. I was happy to have a job. It didn't matter to me. It didn't matter. I just wanted to get a paycheck. I was happy. I was doing something in that field, right? Anyway, so then after that, it was that summer, I was there at the paper for maybe 3 months. And then after that, I went to Santa Barbara. But so what happened was, in Southern California, there was this company called Vision Sports, and they did Vision Streetwear.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, I remember that.
So they had this on the second floor. They had this very, for lack of a better word, this prestigious art room, right? And there were only 9 artists in there, and I was one of those guys. And it was cool because I came from Santa Barbara to do Sims only. I did work on Vision things at times, but because Tom licensed his name to Brad Dorfman, who ran Vision Sports. So anyway, long story short, jumping ahead, that was a great time. And most of those folks, after Vision stopped, went on to Volcom, hence the aesthetic of Volcom, because we had developed that at Vision.
Okay, right. Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So like back to what Bob was saying so lovely, is we all had our own copy machine in our office. It was amazing. and they were never serviced, so the drums on them were absolutely.
Yeah. Oh my God!
Say, did you guys have them serviced regularly, or did you do it yourself?
So we would Xerox. Everything was done that way.
Yeah.
And so when I was there were 2 phases of Sims. When I was in Santa Barbara, and then when I went to Vision Sports. And when I went to Vision Sports, I did maybe 100 and some paste up ads a year for magazines, and I had an ad manager there, and that's when you would build a mechanical, have overlays, and you'd call out everything.
Right.
100 a year. 100 a year. You think about that.
Yeah.
How like
and I did 14 graphics that were all hand cut Ruby. So when graphics were coming, because we worked a year and a half ahead, it took me 2 months just to do the film for the graphics, and then we would screen them for prototypes. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
That's nuts.
So a person's head, like you get. Now again, I want to preface this with like what Bob said. Like we were just there. Like all of us did those things. You know what I mean? We worked with Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo, The Cure.
Oh, right.
My good friend Andy Bella remembers those days. But anyway, so this was all part of that thing. And you know what? Like nobody gave it a second thought at all.
That's just how it was. That's how it was.
Yeah, just how it was.
Done.
Like and I'm glad there was no social platform or anything, because it probably would have ruined it.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong about that.
No, I'm not.
We'll definitely get into that too.
That's a whole pod episode all by itself.
All of this stuff is Bob. Oh my God! Like I mean,
think about it, like how you used to find records. Like that's all.
Oh, come on.
Right? Like you used to have to go talk to somebody. And sometimes they didn't have the record you wanted, and you had to find it somehow.
Oh my God, Bob!
But this is what I wanted to talk about. Kind of that cultural. This was part of the culture, and where I've had these kind of conversations with some past guests about the culture of snowboard. I mean, it comes from punk rock. It's the same type of culture. Skateboarding, street sports, snowboarding. There, we all get it, and we're finding whatever we can, and we're creating something new.
Yep.
We're trying to get ideas across without having to go through any gates of somebody older than us saying, yes, you can do this. No, you can't.
Yep.
We wanted to speak our own minds in our own artistic ways, our own verbal ways, all of that. I mean, Bob, if you think about the music, the sport, like it's all very rebellious. And it's not driven by, I want to be a rebel. It's driven by
it's not.
Different.
I got something I want to do. And it's definitely it's definitely like, it's funny because I looked at kids who are my age now, and like, it's got to be there. I think kids are mellower now, but like, man, we were, kids today are more polite. People say, oh, they're apathetic or they're not as motivated. Like, that's bullshit.
I totally agree.
But like, it was just different. And I think there's something that was very kind of scratch and claw about like when we were coming up.
I agree.
And a lot of that was just like getting your hands on the machine, literally. You know what I mean?
That is so true, Bob. Again, you were just there, but I feel like it was definitely food for your everyday. Like you just made it happen.
Yeah, and it was a community. Like Scott, we've talked about this. I mean, we've all talked about this. It's just that it was a community of like-minded people, young people.
It was. And you would want to meet them. Like, for example, if I'm in Southeast or whatever, and I find out Bob's doing this or that, I want to go see him.
Right.
Or we talk about, I've been at Kinko's, I've been doing this. And I'm like, oh, whoa. And
oh my God. So the Kinko's I was at, Scott, you'll love this. And you'll get this instantly. It was like, I was on 23rd and Lovejoy. It's a bank now. But Hal Wolverton used to come in, the guy from Plasm down the street.
Pete?
Yeah, Josh.
Oh, yeah, Josh.
They'd all come in. And they're like Thomas Lauderdale used to come in, like on his scooter.
Oh,
like
they used to. Yes.
So when I talk about kind of being like the Montmartre, like I know I'm hot, but it fucking was, man. It was. Those people are like they're just in and out every day. And I was going to say this earlier. You talk about being opportunist and kind of taking your opportunities in your own hands. Like I had a printed copy of my portfolio under the counter just in case someone walked up and said, "Oh, what do you do?"
Look out,
right?
I love that.
Because that was in the water. That's what everybody. That's what you did, right? That's how you got gigs. Yeah.
So then
in the water.
That's probably how you got into the magazine stuff. right?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I mean, the magazine, like moving from the snowboard world into.
Oh, yeah. Well, let me answer. Your other question was, so real quickly, so everybody knows, Tom's agreement and license was up at Vision in like 91, or no, I'm sorry, around 90. And because of legal regulations, I was not able to go. And that was hard for Tom and I, but in the same breath, and I'm living in Orange County, of course, but so then I get a call a couple months later from Rob Morrow in Salem, Oregon, and he says, hey, I'm starting my own company, Morrow Snowboards. I want you to come up and help me run it. And I was like, what? Anyway, it was a mind blower, and it was difficult for me to leave Sims and what Tom and I had, because it'd been almost a decade.
Oh, wow.
And so, but I'm like, okay. And so I came up to Salem, and that's when things really hit the fan.
And you knew Rob from Sims, right?
I knew Rob from Sims. I met him in Vermont, of all places, when he was 12. He was a junior rider, and I get on the chair, Stratton Mountain in Vermont, and I was worried about him. I'm like, hey, are you okay? Like, are you here with your parents? And he was so nonchalant about it. He ends up winning the junior contest. Tom put him on the team, and it went from there. So I've known Rob forever, pretty much.
Nice. That's nuts. I didn't know that. How funny.
Yeah. So in your timeline, Michelle, I was at a crossroads because I had also got accepted to RISD. I was going to go back and get my master's.
Oh shit. Okay. Oh God. Wow.
Yeah. So I thought to myself, well, because all my family's in there, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm finally going to go back to the East Coast. I'll be with my family, whatever. And then Jake Burton had called too, and I thought, I'm really straddling reality here. So I decided to ignore. Oh, I did talk to Jake, but I decided to maybe ignore going to Burton. I just wasn't comfortable with it, but Jake and I had a good time. Sure. And then I thought, well, you know what? Going up at Rob could be really kind of cool. And like Bob is saying, I had this itch in my soul about doing graphic design in a more harder way.
Yeah.
So there went RISD out the window.
Interesting.
So, and
was that I'm curious, because that's a pretty big deal to say no to. Like, God knows who you could have met or what you could have done at RISD. Right?
That's really true. And I'll tell you, I broke my left arm trying to get into that school.
Right. Jesus. It's the best place.
Yeah.
It's like the Harvard of design, right? I mean,
Rhode Island School of Design. Yeah. For the people out there. So anyway, I drive up here to Salem and was blown away at. It was the opposite of Los Angeles, Orange County, or whatever.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
Yep.
So here I am over my head to exactly the culture Bob and you are describing, to where nobody knows what they're doing whatsoever. Although the faculty that was at Morrow was Rob's uncle and his aunt, and then their friends. These people are not in action sports. They're not they were great people. I do want to say that. And they took a chance on Rob's idea, which he had going.
Scott, can I break in for, didn't they own like the crane company, like the industrial?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So they've got some coins.
They had some dough for sure.
Some money.
And so Rob has this idea.
So when you see a Morrow crane,
that's right.
That's it.
That's a big deal.
Them, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So they had backing behind them, and we had this little office in Salem across in this little bread factory and stuff. And, I was like, again, good thing Bob's here, because he's been a great coach. We were just there. I saw it as an opportunity to be part of this larger thing. And there were no egos. It was an equal share in things, except I was on my own graphically. I was the only one that could do it.
Oh, wow.
Wow. You were very necessary.
Salem, they didn't have any. So for the audience out there, in order to do graphics at that time, you needed a dark room. You needed to have yeah, that's right. And so for the audience, the stat camera takes a picture of your black and white art, spits out this polymechanical film. It's a plastic film, so it's what they would call camera ready, and everything's nice and neat. It looks beautiful and whatever.
PMTs.
Yes. Yep. So at Morrow, I can't stress enough how manual and how graphic the beginnings of that company were.
Wow.
It was
because you do not have access to any of that in Salem. I mean, Salem's kind
No,
of
there was no. When I
backwater
got
then.
there, I actually had to go to the next town over, and they had a small stat camera.
Yeah.
So I could only do
I remember that.
18 by 24 inches at a time.
Right.
And so for the audience that's out there, that was the negative film so I would have to cut the ruby, and I would do paste up with my graphics, and then I would take it into the dark room and shoot a negative of it, then tape it all together 6 feet long, and then I would expose each positive, tape that together, and then I would
tile it.
I would tile it.
Oh man!
You'd have to give it size.
The silk screen place, and they would make me 6 foot long, 24-inch wide silk screens.
So I'm ignorant of technology at that. Yeah, so they could make a screen that was that big, a silk screen.
No. So
the camera was too small. The camera.
Let me back up. So for a 5.5 foot graphic, like on a snowboard. So to back what Bob was saying, I tiled it. The film was 18 by 24. And if I'm doing a 5.5 graphic, you'd have to use 4 or 5 pieces.
Yeah. Because the cameras wouldn't be big enough if you didn't have access to that size. I mean, the big ones, I learned how to use those cameras in 1987, I think, when I was in high school. And
they were great then.
But still, I mean, they're huge, right? Yeah. The artwork still wouldn't fit a snowboard.
No, that's correct. No, not at all. So Bob's right. You'd have to tile it. So I would do all the separations. If I had a 4-color snowboard, which I think the early Morrow ones were 4 colors, I tiled all that. So if you think about it, I believe it was 5 pieces of film times 4 is 20 pieces of film. And then I would
line it all up.
Yep, lined them all up. And I built my own light table, and everything worked. And then I sent them to, it might have been Oregon Screen Impressions in Portland. Might have been. I think it was, but so that technology was super, super raw. I mean, we were hand doing everything, and we would get the screens back. And I can definitely tell you, like the Morrow family and their friends were blown away. Like they had never seen the process. They just didn't know.
Wow.
And for me,
you were valuable.
It was,
you were valuable to them.
I was in love, man. I was in love. But I will tell you that, so jumping into the timeline, I worked all that time for that in that first year in 1990. Because we had a action sports trade show in San Diego. So
ASR.
Yes, that's right. So anybody who remembers Action Sports Retailer Show, that's what it is. But by the time I was done, I was really sick. I had just worked myself to death to where my assistant, she had to come and literally get me up every day and help me out for like the last week, because I've been keeping so many long hours. Because just think about it, that just one graphic was all that time.
Right.
Yeah.
And then once they were done, I did have 2 guys to help me screen print prototypes. And then I had to build a trade show booth on top of that.
You were the only one doing that. And you were you're living in Salem. If you're coming from LA and you're learning how to live in Oregon, oh my God, it's so much colder.
I'm going to give you like a massive compliment. It's going to sound really weird, but that's whatever, kind of my style. One of the things I really appreciate about Aaron Droplin is like his art it's pretty good. Right. Yep. That motherfucker works. His work ethic is beast-like. It's like unbelievable, right? Mm-hmm. He works harder than anybody. He's always working. Always and that to me is like that's and I hear you when I hear you talking about what you did. I don't know if I might have whipped out and like I might have said, fuck this, man. This is too much work.
I don't know.
Dude, I have massive respect for like you, for like where you've been and what you've done and how much you've done and have you stuck with that. Yeah.
Bob, I appreciate that. I know that comes from every corpuscle in your blood, so I understand that. Well, so for the audience out there, how this all translates is that, and I think for Michelle and Bob, for all 3 of us, that's what's made me the artist that I am. And so there really wasn't another way to do that. There was just not another way.
Yeah.
So for me, my threshold is huge. I'm not daunted by it.
Yeah.
I went through that. I mean, just in having you talk for Struktur and build a poster and the iterations and all of that. I mean, I saw that in there, but also the amount of work that you always have out in the shows that you've done in the little bit that I've seen. Yeah. And then like Bob and I were talking about in preparation for this call, and I had told you this was that idea of where your style came from, like what drove you to that style, right? We were saying that. And I think I want you to speak to that, but I think we're already seeing where that came from.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk about that because your style is very cut, paste, collage. Yeah. And you talked about that process of making the poster for your talk for Struktur as well. And then when you did your talk about how you put things together and what that is, like, you've learned this way that it just was this way, but it helped develop your style that you've continued all through the evolution of technology. Right, Bob?
Yeah.
Like,
yep.
You know,
yep.
So,
well,
what do you want to, tell us more about that.
I mean, we've kind of already talked about it, and you and Bob have contributed to that story, I think, exceptionally well. But I think, I'm a nuance, where all of us are nuanced. But I loved when the ink just went outside the line and made the mark.
Made something? Yeah.
Yes, and made something. And so building mechanicals and paste up work was a process at that time. So the audience knows we all hated. We're like, oh my God, we got to go through all this just to get an ad and get a proof and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So, but we didn't know any different. But for me, the style came from wanting to share with the audience that someone had been there. So I like showing the line or the tape mark or a small tear, not a big tear, just maybe you don't even notice it. Right. Or colors that don't quite go together that actually make tension in the piece.
That's it. That's it. The tension, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if for the audience out there, the word graphic design doesn't mean much to you folks anymore, but I think you should reclaim that, because graphic design means all of those things that we're talking about. And a graphic designer, I think, is one of the more powerful people in a creative environment because they know about these things. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I mean, either one of you, any of us three can speak to that, but I want to tell the audience out there that where I got that style from was that appreciation for touching it and having the.
Have you always? I'm curious, Scott, because I can kind of trace my aesthetic through like definitely found art. I've always picked shit up off the street and go, God, that's really cool. And that's just like I've cultivated that, definitely. I've nurtured it and watered it, but that's just always been there. And I suspect it's probably true of you as well.
Yeah.
Would you say that? Yeah.
Well, Bob, I appreciate everything you're saying. Of course, it's almost like we're on the same mold. But so for the audience out there, again, I know that's who we're speaking to. Some of you may be like saying like, well, I don't get it. Well, when I was in art school, and I brought this up in a lot of my talks, is that I was taught to see. And I think what Bob's talking about is he is seeing things that could be their possibilities for beautiful moments that he could see. So for me, when I was in art school, my teachers, it wasn't about doing great work. It was about seeing along the way.
Interesting.
That gives me chills. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
right.
Yeah.
But my professors were very strict. I only had 7 people in my class. That's all they accepted.
Oh, wow.
And that's great attention.
Well, there was a lot of crying going on.
I'm sure there was.
Not for me, but I was emotionally and mentally challenged as well, because you thought you did a great composition, but we were all dumber than a box of rocks at that point.
No shit, right? And so it's funny. Like I always have 3 things I want to say simultaneously, so I'll try to parse this as well as I can. But one of them is one of these things that it's really stuck in my head, and it's been both like really uplifting and a personal cudgel to myself. It's like, how bad is like the thought of how bad do you want this? Right? How bad do you want this? Like, I guess I didn't want it as bad as I thought I did. So I usually like concentrate off. Part 2 of that is when I first got out of high school, and I went to Tigard High School. So I know when you talk about Salem, I know your pain. Yeah. Because I know, but I know where you're coming from. Because we moved from LA in the 70s to Tigard, Oregon, and I was like, we went from like,
Bob knows. Yeah, he knows.
Oh my God, no! And they thought I was weird. Like, you don't have to anyway. So.
Right.
Anyway, right. So we were closer brothers than I once believed, Scott. So
we are.
Absolutely.
But part 2 of this is is waiting for like your you have these ambitions, you have these things that Ira Glass has spoken to this before. Like, you have to kind of wait for the skill to catch up with your vision. That's really hard.
Yeah.
Really hard. Because you like when you watch like a beautiful film or see a beautiful piece of design, you go, or an illustration. For me, that's kind of my own personal like demon is like illustration, like, oh fuck, I can't draw like that. But I want to make that piece.
I love that you say that. Yeah, because you feel that like you feel this longing, this pang.
You do.
I want to make that thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And listening to you guys, like we all get our education in different ways along different parts of the path.
Totally.
And I always grew up drawing and doing art. I was known as artist in class since I was 5. But so I didn't take a lot of art classes. I wasn't like, I was like, I don't need the art classes, right?
But you're a great draftsman, Michelle.
Well, that's because my parents were draftsmen. They were engineering draftsmen.
Interesting.
And then I got the graphic design job while I was in high school, while I also worked in a fabric store, and I was already drawing fashion, and I was already making all my own clothes.
There you go.
No, but at the same time, like I actually had to get my education to catch up with me.
Yeah.
And then I don't think I really busted my ass until I got my first job at Columbia Sportswear. I mean, I busted my ass doing martial arts, and that's where I learned how to do it, because I was too lazy and I was not following through with all kinds of things until I got that black belt. And then
you're being real.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Come on. Yeah.
And so it was that first job. And I was in my early 30s when I got that first job and got my degrees out of there. And I wanted it so bad by then, because I felt really behind. So I know that feeling of like when you want something and you work so hard to the point of getting yourself almost burned out and sick, but it comes at different times for some of us.
Yeah.
When you talk about being lazy, Bob, but no, you're not.
Yeah.
Well, neither of you are lazy.
I mean, can we all just give each other a collective like pass on this? Because I feel like I'm 60 plus years old now. I'm like, oh, okay, you know what?
Wait a minute.
And I look at my wall and I look at the shit I've done. It's like, okay,
Exactly.
Do I have a book like that on my shelf, like full of like? No, but you know what? I've done okay.
No, you do.
Not yet. You just haven't. Yeah, exactly.
I agree. And I think when you can give back like this, so hopefully the audience can take stuff away, or if you need to go back and hit Michelle up, she can give you more answers. But I will say for the three of us, I mean, I think that tenacity of not giving up. And again, I have a big problem with this. Like today, a lot of the students I talk to, or even some of my peers or whatever, if they're not getting it instantly, then it's not worth it. And those early days, there was no such thing. So like for my career, like I just never gave up. I will die on the table. I mean, I'm like, there's no way I'm quitting, because I've tried to tell the future to myself. In other words, like, and Bob was just saying, if I don't finish this, I'm going to regret it.
Yep. And I can look back over my career and look at those times where like, oh, whatever, like I'm trying to give myself a break here, not like beat myself up too bad. Like there's definitely times where I thought, oh shit, that was a missed opportunity. If I would have followed through with that. Right?
Yeah,
totally.
You can't do it all, but I think as a person, whether it's whatever section of life you have, obviously we all do. We're the three of us are doing this. I think being persistent, and again, so going back to the skateboarding culture, like there was never a gimme. I was hurt a lot just from hitting the concrete or whatever the thing was. And so for me, I was used to living rough, you know what I mean? So when you're doing that, like I'm not going home singing like a simple song. I was influenced by punk rock and fast moving things. So I was going to bring that to the design too.
Yeah, totally.
I really, not maybe selfishly, because like you guys were saying, like you want to expand this vision and you're trying to catch up with some of this stuff. So
I want to speak to that skateboarding, snowboarding, going to punk rock shows and being in the pit, being a martial artist and fighting, like all of these things, like people still see that in myself, when I out there working out and doing my thing.
Absolutely.
Is that there is a fire that lights when you do these things, and you got to tough it out, and you've got to light that fire in order to protect yourself when you're doing these rough things too. But from playing music, Bob, from drumming, it's the same kind of thing, the same fire you have to call upon to do those things and do them well. They all take a very, very similar energy, and that gets put right into the artwork and the craft and that we do. So
I respect that a lot.
Yeah, and that's what I was telling you last time we talked, Michelle. I was talking about that Dan Wigan quote that I'm going to mangle again, but like he talks about it being, and he's quoting, I learned later from him, Like he was quoting somebody else, but basically the thought is be orderly and disciplined in your everyday life so that you can be original and violent in your creative work.
Yeah.
And which is like really
that works.
Which is a really raw way of saying just take care of take care of the shit. So when you actually come to the thing you love doing, then you have the energy and bandwidth to be able to give it your full expression. And
that's very true.
Yeah. And I think that's what helps us as we get older, get into our 50s and 60s here and still do what we do. I mean, Scott, you're still skateboarding, you know?
Yeah. I'll be 61 here in a couple months. And I skate.
Welcome to the club, brother.
I know, man. Right.
Right.
I feel like I'm 30. I mean, honestly,
look, I dress like a toddler still. So
again, like I said, Bob's way cooler than I am. So
I know
you can't make that stick, Scott. There's no way you can't make that stick. Yeah,
I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about too, because I want to get into that the current state of, you're really good, Scott, with reaching out to the audience and the current state of things. And before we get into that piece, I do want to touch on the magazine work, because that's something that when we get into okay, Marvin Jarrett, I didn't know that I've been getting his current Marvin magazine, right? It's like, I don't know if you guys look at that at all. It's a huge magazine, visuals. It has art, music, culture. You have to go find it. I find it at really odd bookstores. And I didn't realize that was him who started Raygun Publishing, and all the magazines.
He was at Cream before that.
Oh, he was. Oh, God, Cream magazine.
Marvin is amazing.
Cream magazine, music and culture, art.
Wow.
You do? Yeah.
Is he responsible for, did they have anything to do with the new Cream at all?
I don't believe so. Right. Great question, Bob. I don't believe so. But so the magazine Marvin, I helped him with that when I did prototypes with him.
I love it's all loose pages.
Yeah.
It's all folded, Bob. I mean, it's really large.
Well, it sounds like my jam. I can't believe I don't know about
pages,
it.
And it's got inside inserts and stuff. And it's just gorgeous. It's like, okay, if you're going to do a new kind of magazine.
Large format,
Large format.
Oh, damn.
But he did Raygun Publishing. So he did bikini, stick, and nylon, which Bob and I both also, we would buy tons of nylon from here to Japan for apparel stuff. So you helped him launch some of those guys.
So back to your timeline, when I was at Morrow Snowboards and about a year and a half into it, at this point, my graphic design career, whatever you want to call it, just exploded. I mean, it was difficult for me to keep up with it. Wow. And so Marvin saw a Morrow Snowboards catalog and he's like, hey, I'm coming up to Portland. I want you to do a magazine with me. And I know in your
free time, right?
Yeah, I was like, and David and my good friend Neil Feynman were doing Raygun at that time, and Marvin, I think, saw he's like he's one of us, and he's an amazing musician as well. But he saw this possibility, and anyway, so long story short, he came up and we did the first pagination for Bikini, walking around Portland. And Marvin and I hung out at Rich's Cigar quite a bit, actually, because he would come up.
Yeah,
that was right under McDonald's.
Yes,
like your little logo, Bob. It was under that old. McDonald's.
Right. I used to go. Well, I worked at that. I worked at that Galleria. I worked on the second floor of the Galleria. I'd go there. I'd go to Escape Veneer Pizza, and I would just
baby,
right, yeah. That's where I bought my gawas. That's where I bought my clothes. That's where
I love it.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Man.
Well, so that's how it started. It was my journey into Raygun. And again, back to the paste up for the audience. We still had to do mechanicals, and I did the magazine in 5 days, and I did it in Quark. So
Quark.
95
95.
Not Express.
Quark Express. Right. That's right.
And how big was your computer screen?
13-inch screen.
Yeah, I don't remember what I had. I remember when I was at Morrow, I had to talk Rob's aunt and uncle into allowing me to spend $3,000 for an SE. So the window was like maybe this big. I think it was 7x9, right, Bob? Or
they were 13-inch screens. I remember them being 13-inch screens. Like
it was super, and it was black and white. So I outputted all my type, and then I cut it up and whatever. Blah blah blah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But anyway, so in '92, whilst I was at Morrow, Marvin and I became very close friends, and I started doing Bikini. And it was great. I mean, I was lucky to do all these things. And I think back to what you and Bob were saying, I think Marvin really saw that hustle inside me of like, oh, he can do this.
Yeah.
And I have to tip my hat to like Tracy Foreman and Noah Gold. And there are a whole bunch of staff that really made this work, and Marvin and Jacqueline, because we really did this in a unified way.
Wow. That's nuts.
And Marvin and I kind of led that vision or whatever of it.
That's so cool, Scott.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can you speak to, I mean, because when I look for, especially bikini stick, they're very obscure now. Because it's pre-internet and you can't find a lot there. And of course you can find a lot of nylon. So if people are wondering, yes, this is the current nylon magazine that you've seen and known, but these were the precursors and that was the one that's kind of made it through. And so can you talk just for a minute about that? Like how the style and why you guys chose all of those specific topics for those magazines.
Yeah, so like with bikini, Marvin, it was a metaphor for Los Angeles and New York fashion scene and culture. He just loves that. So anyway, so bikini was about that, and it really, I think it, and maybe a selfish way, he got to shoot and see a lot of these movie stars or whatever the thing was, and I mean they were great because we worked with like Chris Farley and Adam Sandler and. I don't know. I can't think of all the. I'm sorry to the audience. I can't think of all these names. Christopher Walken.
Whatever. So cool.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, so that was really cool. And I will tell you, and I mean this honestly, back to what Bob said. Like we were just there. I remember giving it a second thought. And in those days, when Raygun wasn't what it was at that point. We were doing some of this out of Marvin's house and. Whatever, but then we had an office in Santa Monica and then things changed. But so after bikini, it went so well. I did it for a couple of years and then Marvin's like, hey, he wanted to do a magazine called Stick because he knew I had snowboarding by the throat. And so we did that.
Yeah.
And so then after Stick, I'm just going to jump through this. So that was fun. And we really got a chance to spotlight most of our friends in that culture. But it was still good because it gave advertising a whole other segment to get into. Yeah. And I really feel like that worked well for the advertising because you couldn't touch at that point unless you were in the golden door and you knew what was going on. Anyway, so after that, after Stick was done, Marvin came to me with Helena Christensen. She was a Victoria's Secret model.
Yep.
And said, hey, can you do a prototype for this magazine called Nylon? So I just did the prototype.
I forgot she was involved in that. Yeah. Totally. Right, supermodel, art director, right? Right. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm like, oh shit. Right.
So the first thing I did for Nylon was I designed a custom font, and which I believe is still on the masthead. I think so. I'd have to look at it. I'm pretty sure. But I only did the prototype to be sold, and then a gal from New York took it over. So I can't take a lot of credit for it, except Marvin and Helena started that and then
launched.
Yeah. Hey, I want to take this moment because I feel like there's something like we're covering the history and we're ticking all the boxes when it comes to that. But what I want to talk about with you, Scott, is zoom out. Maybe this is for the kids listening at home. Is like at the time, like when that was out, when Emigrate was coming out, and especially in the pages of the Emigrate, there was like this like death match between what you guys were doing and people like Massimo Vignelli were doing, right? Between like real graphic design. That's and what was going to and the anarchy in these pages, you can't read anything. And I remember like there was like when I was at Nike, one of the art directors coming to one of the designers and showing him because he was an older designer and he wasn't really getting with the program with the new graphics. And this guy was saying like, have you seen Raygun magazine? And he goes, yeah, I can't read it. And you go, that's not the point. You look at it and you feel it. Like anyway. So here's the thing. So you know that, I know that in my heart of hearts. You've been there, I've been there. Well, I want to tell the kids at home listening, like the younger kids especially, is that like now, if you design a magazine like Raygun or Nylon, now that you're literally copying a pastiche of something that happened 20, 30 years ago, right? Not only do you have this graphic style that was born out of like a really, really kind of a crucible of like whatever the fuck was going on back then. You also had this dialogue that I don't see anymore. Right. It was like real. It was like there are people getting upset about this shit, right?
Yeah.
Like real graphic design versus like this anarchy and this, right? It was like, right. It's like I remember. It's almost like who's Renner, the guy who designed the typeface feature like in the 20s, like got thrown in jail because you're supposed to be designing fonts that look a certain way. It was serious business back then. There was real debates about this that I don't see nowadays. And I'm not an old man yelling at the clouds. It's not about that. I'm not saying like I know there's conversations happening maybe in different places with different people. But I remember how strident the conversation was around how upset people are getting about like this, like this is a design. What do you call this? This is bullshit.
Big point. That is.
Can you speak to that a bit?
I can. Rudy Vanderlands from Emigre he did support the movement, but in a very structured way with Emigre, and we all loved it. But you also had people like Rick Valiceni or like David Carson,
all the CalArts kids.
Right. And Scott McKella. And there were a number of people, I think that, so to be specific to your point, Bob, I feel like at that point, skateboarding in general started challenging the norm, because I'm going to really go back to a core probably mover here, is that the professional riders started doing their own graphics. So for example, like Neil Blender, who's a great name in skateboarding, he challenged and just broke the mold of like, okay, I don't need Gordon and Smith on the bottom of my board. I'm going to do my own thing. And he did illustrative work, and it changed the game. It changed everything. So if you look at a movement in graphic design,
Gonzalez,
somebody started telling a different stories, just like say David, who started at started at Transworld. So some of those early Transworld magazines he did, and David, if you listen to this, he knows what I'm talking about. He started taking some chances for sure with the page. And of course he's well structured and he knows what we're talking about for sure. But a lot of graphic folks, to what you're talking about, Bob, saw the straight line, saw the grid, and said, you know what, I can make this more powerful.
And maybe that's it. Maybe that's we're talking about this. How do you? As I remember hearing like once upon a time, like graphic designers are communicators. That's kind of like what we're supposed to be at our best. Like we're supposed to communicate. So and you have this energy, and I'm kind of pontificating here, but like you have this energy, and it was a big deal. Like going to a punk show, getting beat up, or having. Or whatever, right? There's a very visceral energy to all of this. And as a graphic designer, how do I express that, right?
Yes.
Right. But I think that's the point, excuse me, is it made people feel uncomfortable, because those scenarios that we were used to are uncomfortable. You can't just walk in and be anybody and walk into a punk show and suddenly feel like you're right there, even though it's very inclusive. It is inclusive of everybody, but you gotta you gotta be accepting of the energy, and it's messy. And it's lots of different ideas coming together. And I think that's the type of thing that makes people feel uncomfortable. And I think that's what this art does. We look at it and we go, that's amazing and that's beautiful. And other people are like, I don't know how to make sense of it. What am I supposed to do?
You'll both appreciate this. So I was at a hotel once when I was working with New Balance, and I was sitting in my usual spot at the bar or whatever. And I, to this day, you'll love this when I say this, when I finally spit it out. So I didn't see the person, but I heard someone next to me say, that looks weird. And I thought, I want to see what you think it is that looks weird.
You can't help it.
I was like, exactly, because I want to know. It was like a lamp or something. It was hand blown or something like that. But I just like the second I hear somebody not like something, I want to see what the fuck that thing is.
Yeah, and also it caught their attention.
I love it.
Right? What is that?
That is I don't know where the fuck that came from, but that's been in my soul.
I love that.
My primordial days.
Yes.
I just want to see something.
But I look at stuff like that and I say, well, it got your attention, and now we're having a conversation. And now we're talking about it.
I'll tell you another thing that both of you can relate to, and other designers out there can relate to. One of the things that led to that, and I think David did a great job using it, but we were in the programs back then, we were conformed. Like if you were going to use Quark, it was very geometric. There was a built-in grid that you were going to use your left arm if you were going to go against it. So David flipped it every which way he possibly could.
He tried to break it.
And tried to break it and did an amazing job. And showed folks, how text could flow or not flow or whatever. So what I'm trying to say about this, though, too, is that at that certain point, a lot of us were using these designated programs against themselves because there was a way to paint the canvas different.
Yeah.
God, who was the one? Was it Carson who set one of the articles in symbol, all in symbol, which is like a dingbat font?
Oh.
Was that him?
I don't.
I remember seeing. I go, oh my god! And it's like, and again, like if you like, it's one of those things. Like the point wasn't like, oh fuck, I can't. It was so audacious and so funny and so like, it's just like,
yeah.
It's
But
like, God.
The whole
Right.
point of it too is
Right.
that you get like, we are coming from a whole world that wants everybody to line up and sit in a box.
Yeah.
Totally.
And we're the culture, especially the Gen X culture, that just didn't want to be in the box.
Jesus, even when I was at Nike, like this is to show you how deep this runs. I remember we'd go to like, you know, what they call like a design day where they'd bring in someone and talk. They'd blow smoke up your ass. And you're like, yeah. Right?
Yes.
You'd be like,
yeah, Bob, you're talking exactly
design overall. And
exactly
then
why
you go back and you sit down at your desk and try to do that shit, and they go, "What the fuck is this?" Like,
that's exactly why I started.
But it was that energy, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly
like,
why I started.
Shut up.
Structure event in the first place.
But right.
Is because it was like, no, I want to bring together the people that the designers want to hear, not all the people that you think the designers want to hear, or you want that, or that you want them to hear.
Yeah,
exactly. And it's a bit of that rebelliousness too.
But that energy, it's just God. It's like either, I mean, and sometimes I feel like I'm hijacking the conversation again, but like it's like either they win or I win. And like I remember when I was at Nike, there was a couple times I got written up because I feel like if I can't do this thing, then I don't want to be here.
So Seth Godin calls it, you're not a cog, you're a linchpin. And it says be a linchpin. And he talked about that being the thing that got him fired from things. So be the linchpin. And that's where you're most valuable.
If you're not happy, then I'm not happy. And if you're not getting my best work, so you're not happy. So why am I here? Right. So
that's a good point. Well, I mean, I'll add to that a bit, Bob. I mean, especially when like yourself, when you're in a position and you're passionate about it, your audience out there, I got to tell you, I don't think any of us, I've never found a perfect role. I've always, I already know going into it, it's going to be a struggle. I know that. I know it's going to be fucked up. I already know that.
I so hear that.
So internally, right? You build, you start, you go into survival mode. You're going to make it what is beautiful for you. And my whole career, that's really what it's been about, was how do I contribute in this way where the journey is really interesting? You know? So what I was addicted to doing those graphics, hand cut graphics. And then, because here's the thing, 4 months later, when I'm looking at printed boards and I'm like, oh my gosh, this all came from this.
Right.
And all those boards, these boards were like whatever, Morrow Sims, whatever, were going out worldwide, and they're all hand cut and printed. You know what I mean? A lot of those boards, people will send me emails of a Sims snowboard from the mid 80s, and they'll ask me where it came from. Well, I can tell them where it came from and probably what year, because I printed it.
Because you built it.
Yeah. So my job at Sims in the mid 80s was, I was silk screening. I chose my own time I wanted to silk screen. I would do different things, but most of the time I was doing the advertising and graphics in my office at the other location. So, but I would print a couple hundred boards a month or whatever. Just to keep my hands dirty.
And again, I don't want to hijack this, but I feel like there was something really salient in what you were talking about just a moment ago about like when you go into a situation, you know, there's going to be a conflict. Let's call it, right? And how do you, let's just call it that. And one of the things that when Michelle and I were getting together talking about what this thing was going to be, this podcast, is like, how do we edify the troops? How do we build them up, educate and edify, and give you something like, oh shit, because we all have this as creatives. We're all going to have this artist-patron relationship. I was talking to Alicia Johnson years and years ago when they did the MG, the Miller Genuine Light commercial. Right. Amazing groundbreaking work. And I was like, how did you get that across the finish line? Because you're talking, and it was a really and it was like, because there's always that point, designer, where you go, what do you think? Do you like it? Will you pay for it? Will you buy it? Right. There's always that, there's never not that, right? You always have that. And she said they was right place, right time. I can't remember exactly what her answer was, but what stuck with me, especially what you're talking about here, Scott, you find, hopefully the stars align, or either by luck or by skill, and probably a combination of both, where you create your tribe so that you can do the work you want to do. And it's going to be messy, and you don't know where it's going. Right? what I want to tell kids listening is like, that's half the, I've talked to Draplin about this. I've talked to everybody about this. Like, how do you create an environment so that you can do the work that you want to do without being, oh God, I never get to do what I want to do. Like, then that's on you, right? Then do something else, right? You have to create. You have to create that. You have to create that environment to be able to do the work that you feel that's in your heart.
I agree with you. I think it also, for myself, I accept most everything.
Yeah.
These days, you run across different levels of people, and their threshold's going to be different. I'm definitely have always been one of those people like, fuck it, I'm going all the way through.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah. And, go ahead.
That's where I think for your audience, like success to me has been small moments. It's could be one of those things where I'm at my desk, I'm like, oh, this looks awesome. And I've just repositioned some type or whatever the thing is. That's success to me. Like what Bob was so eloquently pointing out, that yes, what you do out there is part of a larger group, and you may not get a high five. No one may even know. But in that journey, at your desk or in your mind or whatever, if you have those beautiful moments, that's, to me, that's what the success is.
If you feel like you can, like, you look at it and you're proud of it. I mean, I want to just add to that, is because I feel like a lot of the jobs that come to me, they're ones out of necessity. They're not always. When people say, "Who would you like to?" Because I'm doing apparel design. That's what I end into. Aside from the structure work, which I get to decide what it is, and that's my place. But I always decided in all the apparel design work that whatever I was asked to do, whether it's like Columbia Sportswear ski wear jackets for people in the Midwest, that I was going to do my thing, my best thing for it. For those people, I'm going to make those people look so freaking amazing.
Yeah.
And it's going to be work I'm going to be proud of. And so I feel like I make it the job. And some of the best ones have become more exciting. Like, wow, I didn't think that would be so cool.
Yeah.
And that's just how I approached it, because I didn't feel like I was always getting like the pick of everything dropped in my lap.
What's that quote? I keep thinking about you, Scott, and Draplin, like, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Yeah,
And this is spoken as a kid who was like tag programs growing up. I was like, I don't have to work that. Oh fuck, I'm getting my ass kicked by these people around as good as me. Like, oh, okay.
So it's hard.
That's right.
So how do you guys feel about the AI thing now in the working hard bit? And like how that, because I'm going to interject this in now into this kind of section, is what's going on now and how we're taking it into the future. And I know, Scott, you do a lot of talks, lectures, and you work with students. And we've talked about this before AI really hit, and now AI is here. I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I think for your audience, I just want to say, like Bob and Michelle, like you guys are talking about, I think all of us have argued with ourselves, fought with ourselves, and then landed on a discipline that we contribute to ourselves. And I think at this point, all these years into it, maybe we're comfortable where we're at. So for the new folks out there, what I would really like to tell you is that don't be afraid to find out who you are. It doesn't matter. I mean, it really doesn't matter. If you want to build aluminum foil squares and arrange them and put them out there, make us see it. Like, then help me see what you're doing. That to me is amazing. So what I'm getting at, that's step one. Once you start doing what you really feel like is great, right? I mean, you could be silk screening on tree bark, but see that.
Yeah.
Once you start doing that, you find who you are, then in my opinion, I'm not really threatened by AI. Here's a chance maybe I can use this tool to further discover where I might go. That's my simple take.
Can I jump on that?
Yeah.
That's precisely what I love about again, like the three things at once.
We need to move next to each other, Bob.
No, that's not, because nothing would get, or maybe we'd blow shit up. That'd be amazing. Maybe we should do that. But I love what I hate about, one of the things I hate about getting old is the people, the other old people. It's like what someone said, like, you know what I hate about Christianity is all the Christians. Is like people like because you should be a better map of mind. And you know what? I'm guaranteed my dad said the same thing, and his grandpa said the same thing. And like, that's like, it's always sure, right? Yeah. That's why I made the comment about like design being this pastiche or a style. Like, it wasn't then, if you do that now and you try to like put it over that way, then that is fake, right? So tools are tools. Tools are tools, right? And so that's what I was talking about. Like I want to I have a vision and I want to master my tools so I can create the work that is in my heart. Right. So I see AI isn't any different. Are you trying to tell me, are people really worried about a computer being more creative than they are?
No.
Give me a break, right?
Yeah,
no.
but I think that we have to go through a period where the companies that are hiring designers, like, because I was doing a lot of reading about McKinsey reports, all kinds of reports of design thinking is really dropped down, and people don't want to pay for the designer. They weren't for a while there, and thinking that AI could really fill it in. And then you're quickly understanding that that's not going to happen. Right. And that's where when I wanted to talk about like the human made aspect of it is the energy behind something when a creative individual puts a spirit, a feeling behind it. We study that in martial arts, that paper tigers is that thing behind it that you don't quite understand what it is. It's got an energy. And I think that's that, like, I think a lot of us have been talking about now how it's a little bit of the Blade Runner effect of, oh, wow, is it a real animal? Oh, can I afford a real? Do you think I can afford a real animal? The human made is starting to become more valuable, not just handmade, where we were like crafted and handmade in those days when things were starting to be more digital. Now it's human made. What do you think on that?
I think as artists, all of us, I don't care if you're 12 or you're 35, whatever, I think you need to remember to try to stick up for what you believe in, like you and Bob are saying. And, and you know what I mean? It's really important to be proud of what you're doing, I feel. And for example, like if I have an agency and I'm trying to decide whether I should use Bob or I should use AI, right? Okay, maybe because at the moment, AI can just give me these pictures of these knives and I'm good to go. But for the audience out there, that's not going to last very long at all, because here's what you're going to miss. Number one, you're going to run out of suggestive things. Or if I hire Bob, he's going to go on forever. And then I don't have no, I mean, like he's going to have
right.
I don't mean that. And
I get it.
But what I want the audience to really know is the osmosis of being around Bob and his everyday creative energy and his thought process, just like your friends. That's what things are really about. It's not, I feel like some of these brands anymore look at design or that thinking as a commodity, like, oh yeah, I can fix that somewhere else.
Of course. Yeah.
They're going to find out that that's just not true. It's not possible.
Well, you do agency work. I work for an in-house agency. I mean, I know resources are limited, like, and sales are down. We don't have money for an in-situ photo shoot. Right. Okay. So
but that's the truth. Right.
Okay. All right. And can I make this like you just did it for your background, Michelle? Like I need a background for this thing to sit in front of, right? And like, okay. So, okay. Right. Fair enough. Right. And
I want to point that out, that I did that because of where I'm at. I need a background. And I realized that Zoom has an AI function now. So I tested it out and I made this background. And I love this as a test to the fact that the messy artistic books and art and stuff behind both of you is infinitely more interesting. But that's true. And that's what we talk about is the messiness behind how things are made is what people love to see.
It's like my weird comment. It's about why your shit looks so fucked up, Scott. It's like, and it's so funny. Like the older I get, the more weird stuff I like, because I'm just tired of I'm just tired of all this shit that looks the same.
And we're seeing that in music.
I'm curious. I'm just curious, and like if I had to use one word, that would be it. It's like what, like when you play a video game, what's around that corner that I can't get to? You know what I mean?
I know.
It's like that energy.
Oh, you wanted to explore it, Scott. I want to ask you that because we were talking about the younger people that you're working with. They're kids to us, but they're not kids. Some of them are, but my 13-year-old son. I mean, he is well immersed in VR and he's been building there and digitally online, but he also loves to hand draw and make things. So he's fully integrated in all types of things.
Yeah, great.
And so and he plays sports. He's in basketball and he loves the physical side of things. What are you observing in the young people today that you're working with across the board in this realm?
That's a great question. I think they all, of course, we all have different perspectives, but I can tell you right now, none of them want to take the journey that we've been on. So that's
interesting.
That's very disheartening for me. And so I always kind of go back to like, look, this is for you. This isn't for the brand or the agency. It's like what Bob was saying in the very beginning, or Michelle, you do in martial arts. It's like, I think for the audience out there, do these things for yourself. Like don't do them for a post. Like, don't do them so your friends can see. Like, you need to take some pride in your DNA.
Interesting.
So
it's really interesting, Scott.
Yeah. Are you saying that you're asking them to go on certain journeys and they don't? Are they resistant, or how is this coming about?
Both. Some folks just don't see the road to getting there. They're just like, yeah, I can't do that. And that's kind of, I'll be honest, that's a trigger for me, because that means that they don't believe in themselves. And I don't think that's a good idea.
Well, that's the whole point, is if you can't see the road, you're going on a journey of exploration and discovery.
Yeah.
And that's
I wondered about that. I'm glad you're talking, because I feel like I never want to get to the point where where I just take it for granted that someone knows what I'm talking about. When you're talking about like Ruby lift, you got to explain what Ruby lift is, because because we're people of a certain age and they don't know about that. And I remember growing up, like there was an arrogance about people who were older than me. They're just like, oh, that didn't sit well with me, right? And flies in the face of curiosity, frankly, right? So I've always thought. So anyway, to make a long story short, I love, like, as many times as I can, I try to interact with people who are a lot generations younger than I am, because I'm curious about that. And if there's a theme to what I think you hear me saying, is just be curious. And then the second you're not curious anymore, you might as well just like hang it up.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. That's a great point, Bob. And like what you're saying, Michelle, obviously he has a good mom. I think when folks get to the starting line, that's where the confusion is. Like, I'm thinking to myself, okay, hey, you made it here. Like, let's talk about that next step and what that might look like. All three of us definitely believe in the new designers and students and what they have. I mean, clearly, like, I don't think any of us were any better or worse than they were. I mean, I definitely was. I was telling Michelle earlier, like, my first month we were looking at waxing the back of typography and pasting it up. And I'm thinking, where is this going?
Yeah.
I'm not seeing it. And then cutting, instead of like painting the color or using a colored pencil, I'm cutting Letraset color. And I'm thinking, what? And anyway, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So, which I still have, by the way. No, but so for the audience out there, I feel like, look, in your mind or even physically, you brought yourself to the starting line. Like, just go. Like, don't be afraid.
Just go, right.
Make a ton of mistakes and just do it.
I feel like it's kind of like, I get what you're saying. Like, and like, it's funny, like there's different, like when you're going on your journey, you don't know where it's going, but there's also like things that kind of shove you off in directions you didn't expect to go. Like, I can draw, okay, I have a thing I can do, but I can't illustrate a beautiful botanical illustration, so like that pushed me over this way, where I'm kind of like, well, I won't use that as much, or I'll use it in a different way, right? Yeah. And I now looking back on it, if I had to tell somebody like all the shit I've been through, like, it must seem overwhelming, right? But I feel like, what I heard you say though, Scott, when you got your first job at, like, you were just happy to be there because you were in the game, right? Yeah. And I was a paste up intern, like at a magazine at the downtown, right? And I was like literally, like, I would like set the type and get the type back, and then I'd like make a VLOX, and then we'd paste it up, and like right. Sometimes I'd have to draw it myself. Sometimes they'd let me use my own little stupid drawings, I don't even know if I was getting paid, frankly. But I was like so happy to be like, and then the paper would come out, and you'd see your thing in there, like, I did that, and that was enough.
Yes,
at that point.
Yeah. I think there's some things we have to be careful about putting our experiences and standards on the next generation, because
1,000%, because my kids tell me all the time, like, Papa, you can't do that anymore. Like, I know, but
see, this is what I'm wondering too. Like, when Scott, you were saying like that you get dismayed about it, and I found myself doing that too. And then I see some glimmers of hope in my son. And I find like he'll pull up. He loves Kanye West. He loves a lot of rap. We're in Oakland. He's growing up in the Oakland scenario, and he will put on all kinds of different Kanye songs when we drive to school. and he'll pull out all the clips, the cuts from 70s music, and he'll talk about them.
Yeah.
And the other day, he just put on Billy Joel's "I'm Moving Out" or "Moving Out," and he's listening to the Billy Joel song. And I said, "How'd you discover this?" And he said, "Oh, it's in a Kanye song." And he plays me the Kanye song, and he goes,
"Wow!"
But what he does is he goes and he finds a lot of the old songs from there, and he goes and digs into the original and learns about the artist. And I went, "That's what we did. We got curious and we went and found the answers ourselves."
That's
so I think there's a certain amount of like guiding them to find it themselves. Some hope in that. How do you do that as a teacher, as a lecturer, as a leader, or somebody in a company? How do you do
like
that?
you guys were saying, I think it's, say I put myself in their position, and the last thing I want to do is put that fire out. So I try to ask maybe more personal questions of what they like and what they're seeing. And then we kind of go from there. And then, like both of you have been saying, I think you find these little pieces of gold and you just go and go.
Yeah.
What I really tell them is that, as far as being conclusive about it, is that it may take a while, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But remember, like, you're investing in you. Like I feel like along our way, we invested in ourselves. Like Bob starting this out with like, I went to Kinko's and I was doing this and this. I mean, I'm sure you weren't thinking of anything else, Bob, but like you were just happy to be there. And I feel like with your son, he's happy to look these things up. Like he's getting rewarded by doing that. And I think for your audience out there, you need to do that. Like, but start to show us why collectively, whether you're going to make music or whether you're going to cook food. Like, show us like what you're doing. And that's really what it's about.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
it.
Absolutely.
It doesn't, there's so many things out there. I am a little biased about social platforms and all on them, because you see this stuff and you're like, oh, I want to be there, or I could do that or whatever. Well, you don't stop and see the journey that either one of us were on. So like, it's a little bit misleading. So I would suggest like, okay, take a look, but you are what you eat too. Keep in mind, like, put yourself first. And if you, whatever you want to do, like I said, if you want to silk screen on bark, or you want to, then do it. Like, do it. Just try it out. But please don't expect 1,000 likes for it, because it's not about.
Well, that's the whole. It's all, and that's again like that feels to me like that feels transactional and performative, right? And believe me, I am the biggest like canned ham. Like I am as performative as they come. Ask my wife. All right. But I'm also aware, like some days I'm a consumer, some days I'm getting paid to produce, right? Like there's lots of days where I'll just sit and look at shit, right? And that's how you learn. Like that's raw material. You're taking it. But some days you have to like shut it off. Like shit, I got something I want to say today or this week, right? And you put that all aside and you go, this is right. And I would think as a getting started, if you haven't got that figured out yet, that could be overwhelming. That could be a reason to kind of like not get started. I understand that.
I think also, like, when I think about your history, Scott, focusing, like, we all have our own stories in that, but looking at your history that we talked about today, is you got handpicked by a lot of people to do things based off of you doing your thing the way you knew to do it and wanted to do it. And that's what I'm hearing both of you talk about as well, that we've all talked about, is you've got to find your voice, your thing. And then people are going to want you. You want people to want you.
And stick up for it and be and be authentic and show people what you can offer them or whatever. I think any of us here can entertain a room and provide some direction. And I think that's really important. My issue with some of the things today, that programs are so overwhelming and so there's so many shortcuts and hacks and stuff. I hate that shit. But what I want to say is, whatever journey you're on, whether you're like us or whether you're 20, like, be educational in the journey, like take enlightenment in it and share some of that. You know what I mean? Like, don't keep it internal, right? I mean, like, one of the great things I like about my many jobs, but is I learn from everybody. A 14-year-old could come in and show me something they've done, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Where'd that come from? Right. So raw and like.
So don't lose hope. Like you guys are saying, I think for the audience out there, If you want anything from this podcast, is like, learn to see and do what you think is in your heart. You know what I mean? I think it's super important.
I think you just answered my last words of advice, but I also wanted to then have some last words from Bob and I. And one of the thing I want to say is really point out, Scott, how giving you are.
Mm-hmm.
You're always giving compliments to others. You're always including. You're always so generous with your positive spirit and your heart, never ending. And I I thank you because I want to point that out. And that kind of energy, it feeds us, right? It makes me want to keep going. And I know that energy was one of the reasons why I know that Bob and I were very excited to interview you together.
I appreciate that.
I want to open that up for Bob's last words then for you.
Well, that's what I mean, like, you're going to laugh when I say this, Scott. Like, I feel like, God, there's a part of me, as all designers have that little bit of imposter syndrome, and I probably have it more than most people, but like Scott, you're treating me like I'm here. I'm like, dude, you're like, I'm a pantheon. And like, you're talking to me like I'm like, no, but here's the magic trick you pulled off. You made me believe it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh shit, and I was like, oh, I guess I have done a few things, right?
That's how I feel.
Yeah, right. That's what, So what I want to say about it is, like, my ex-brother-in-law is a big shot musician in Nashville. I remember talking to him about like the music scene in Nashville, and he goes, that place is overrun with people who could kill you, like really great players, right? But the people who get hired all the time are the people who are fun hangs, right? Having chops is table stakes, right? What gets you hired is, are you a fun hang? Are you fun to work with? Do you get the work done? But are you fun to be around? Right? And I feel like, oh God, that's such an important part. And it's, I guess you'd call it the soft skills, but it's like, it makes like, I've had both, right? I've had people who kick my ass and really fun, and we got great work done, but like, oh God, I don't know if I'm going to do that again. And there's other people who you don't even question it, like, what's next, right? Yeah. So that to me is like, so I definitely get that vibe from you, Scott. It's like, I'm thinking of things that I want to do with you. You know what I mean? So I don't have anything, but I'm just like, you know what I mean? And
they'll come up with something.
But that's a lot.
But you know what, Bob? Right? You just did something with him. We just did a podcast.
How about that? Yeah.
Which brought all three of us super close. Yeah. Honestly, I really don't have any words for both of your compliments. And I will add to this, and I don't want to say too much because both of you are so generous with it. But I know you both can speak to this too, but I want the audience to know that the reason why I'm so giving is because you don't get anywhere by yourself. I mean,
oh my God,
I have been generous because people have done that to me, and all of us work with great folks, and that's just how it works. It's not just me. It's not just Bob, John, Michelle. I mean, we all do things together, and I think that's really cool. And again, to argue the point of like, get away from the computer and go out and get involved in the community, like Michelle, that's really where it starts to come from, and the humbleness just sets in because you realize, oh yeah, I got here because of 10 other people.
Yeah. Oh, so eloquently spoken. Oh.
No, I'm a little overwhelmed, I must admit, but I really thank you both. I mean, it's been awesome.
Man,
you know,
you guys, you are the best. I mean, this is my joy doing this, and so thank you. Yeah.
Well, I'm tipping my hat to both of you because it's not a magic trick, Bob. I respect and admire both of you because you guys had that tenacity and that. Your tank is filled and like you guys are trucking, and I'm like, I want to be like them.
We're trying. We're all doing the best we can, and right now we all have to be community and have each other's back and celebrate the things that are important because you know, all of us as a culture, we need it. We need to set the example. You have been listening to UnStruktured, the podcast from Structure Society. If you enjoyed this episode, please download, share, like, subscribe, and add your thoughts and suggestions in the comments. Also, please consider a Substack paid subscription to help us bring even more meaningful content and connection points to you and our creator community. Here you will find articles and news, as well as the podcast and additional content. We cannot grow without you. Thanks for listening, and talk to you soon.